The clock on Ronda Rousey's car dashboard showed 11:47 p.m. as she drove through the quiet streets of downtown Los Angeles. She was tired but happy. The charity event she had just left was a huge success. They raised over $200,000 for the women's shelter. Ronda smiled as she thought about all the women and children who would get help because of tonight. Her black BMW moved smoothly through the empty streets. Most people were home sleeping by now. The city looked different at night. The bright lights from buildings made everything glow, but the streets felt lonely. Ronda turned up the radio a little. A soft jazz song was playing. It helped her relax after the long evening. She had spent 4 hours at the event. There were speeches, dinner, and a silent auction. Many people wanted to take pictures with her. Some asked about her fighting career. Others wanted to know about her movies. Ronda was always polite, but sometimes she got tired of answering the same questions over and over. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was about helping people who really needed it. The shelter helped women who were running away from dangerous situations. It gave them a safe place to stay with their children. Ronda knew what it was like to feel scared and alone. When she was younger, her family didn't have much money. Her father died when she was 8 years old. Her mother worked hard to take care of Ronda and her sisters. As she drove, Ronda thought about the woman who spoke at the event. Her name was Maria. She came to the shelter with her 2 young children. Her husband used to hit her. One night she got scared he might hurt the kids too, so she took them and ran away. The shelter gave them a place to live. They helped Maria find a job. Now she was studying to become a nurse. Ronda reached for her water bottle and took a sip. She was wearing a simple black dress and comfortable shoes. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, but her eyes were still bright. Even after all these years of fame, helping people still made her feel good inside. The streets got quieter as she drove toward her house in the hills. There were fewer streetlights here. Big trees lined the road on both sides. Ronda had lived in this area for 3 years. She loved how peaceful it was. After years of fighting in front of thousands of people, she enjoyed the quiet. But tonight she wasn't alone on the road. About half a mile behind her, a black and white police car was following. Inside the patrol car, Officer Jake Morrison gripped the steering wheel tightly. His jaw was set in a hard line. His partner, Officer Rick Torres, sat in the passenger seat looking uncomfortable. Morrison was 34 years old. He had been a police officer for 12 years. He was tall and muscular with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. Most people who met him thought he took his job too seriously. Tonight he was angry about something that happened 2 years ago. His younger brother Danny had been a photographer for a celebrity magazine. One night Danny was chasing a famous actor to get pictures. The actor was driving fast, trying to get away from the photographers. Danny was riding his motorcycle, following too close. When the actor made a sharp turn, Danny crashed. He broke his back and couldn't walk anymore. Morrison blamed the actor. He blamed all celebrities. He thought they were selfish people who only cared about themselves. He believed they thought they were better than everyone else, that they could do whatever they wanted because they had money and fame. When Morrison saw Ronda's car leaving the hotel where the charity event was held, something snapped inside him. He recognized her immediately, the former UFC champion, the movie star, another celebrity who probably thought she was above the law. "There she is," Morrison said to his partner. His voice was quiet but angry. "Miss High and Mighty herself." Torres looked at the BMW ahead of them. "Come on, Jake, she's not doing anything wrong. She's just driving home." Rick Torres was 26 years old. He had only been a police officer for 2 years. He was shorter than Morrison, with dark hair and kind brown eyes. Torres became a cop because he wanted to help people. He grew up in a poor neighborhood and saw how good police officers could make a difference. But Torres was also scared of Morrison. The older officer had a bad temper. He had been written up several times for being too rough with people they arrested. Other officers warned Torres to stay on Morrison's good side. They said Morrison could make life very difficult for a young officer who crossed him. "She thinks she's special," Morrison continued, pressing harder on the gas pedal. "All these celebrities think they can do whatever they want. It's time someone taught her a lesson." Torres felt his stomach twist into knots. "What kind of lesson?" "Jake, what are you talking about?" Morrison's eyes stayed fixed on Ronda's car. "I'm talking about showing her that fame and money don't make you better than anyone else. I'm talking about teaching her some respect. The police car got closer to Rhonda's BMW. Morrison turned off their emergency lights. He didn't want other people to see what he was planning. The streets were mostly empty, but there were still a few cars around. Torres could see where this was going. He had heard Morrison talk like this before. Usually it was just angry words. But tonight felt different. Tonight Morrison seemed ready to do something stupid. Look, Jake, I know you're still upset about Danny, but this isn't the way to handle it. This woman didn't hurt your brother. Let's just finish our patrol and go home. Morrison turned to look at Torres. His eyes were cold and angry. Are you telling me what to do, rookie? Because I don't think you want to do that. I've been doing this job since before you graduated high school. I know what I'm doing. Torres felt scared. He wanted to call for backup or tell their sergeant what was happening. But he also knew that Morrison had friends in the department. If Torres spoke up, Morrison could make his life miserable. He might even lose his job. Ahead of them, Rhonda had no idea she was being followed. She was thinking about getting home to her dogs. She had 2 German shepherds who always got excited when she came home late. They would probably be waiting by the door, wagging their tails. She was also thinking about tomorrow. She had a meeting with her agent about a new movie role. Then she had training at the gym. Even though she wasn't fighting professionally anymore, she still worked out every day. It kept her strong and healthy. Rhonda turned onto a quieter street. There were no other cars around now, just trees and darkness on both sides of the road. She was about 10 minutes from home. Behind her, Morrison smiled for the first time all night. This was perfect. No witnesses. No traffic. Just him, his partner, and the celebrity who was about to learn that fame couldn't protect her from everything. He pressed down on the gas pedal again. The police car moved closer to Rhonda's BMW. Torres closed his eyes and hoped that Morrison would come to his senses before it was too late. Rhonda first noticed the police car when she looked in her rearview mirror at a red light. It was about 3 car lengths behind her. She didn't think much of it at first. Police cars were common in this part of the city, especially at night. The light turned green and she drove forward. She made a left turn onto Sunset Boulevard. The police car turned too. Then she made another turn onto a smaller street that led toward the hills. The police car followed again. That's when Rhonda started to feel uneasy. She looked at her speedometer. She was driving exactly 25 miles per hour. The speed limit was 30. She wasn't doing anything wrong. So why was the police car staying so close behind her? She decided to test something. At the next intersection, she used her turn signal and made a right turn. She watched her mirror carefully. The police car turned right too. Now she was sure they were following her. Rhonda's heart started beating faster. She had never been in trouble with the police before. She always followed the law. She paid her taxes on time. She had never even gotten a speeding ticket. What could they possibly want with her? Behind her, Morrison was getting more excited. He could see that Rhonda was starting to notice them. Good. He wanted her to feel nervous. He wanted her to know what it was like when someone more powerful picked on you. Jake, please don't do this, Torres whispered. His hands were shaking. Whatever you're thinking, it's not worth it. Think about your career. Think about your family. Morrison laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. My family? You mean my brother who can't walk anymore because some celebrity thought he was more important than everyone else on the road? That family? Torres tried one more time. That wasn't her fault. She wasn't even there when Danny got hurt. You can't blame every famous person for what happened to your brother. But Morrison wasn't listening anymore. He reached over and turned on the police car's flashing lights. Not the sirens, just the red and blue lights that made everything around them look like a disco. Rhonda saw the lights in her mirror and felt relief. Finally, she thought. They want me to pull over. Probably just a routine check, or maybe there was something wrong with her car that she couldn't see. She put on her turn signal and started looking for a safe place to stop. She found a wide spot next to a small park. There were streetlights here, which made her feel safer. She pulled over carefully and put her car in park. Then she turned off the engine and waited. She kept her hands on the steering wheel where the officers could see them. This was what her father had taught her to do if she was ever stopped by police. Morrison pulled the patrol car up behind her BMW. But instead of getting out right away, he did something strange. He turned off the flashing lights. Then he backed up about 20 feet. What are you doing? Torres asked. His voice was getting higher. He was really scared now. Morrison didn't answer. He put the car in drive and pressed down on the gas pedal. The patrol car jumped forward. Rhonda was checking her side mirror when she saw the police car coming toward her fast. Too fast. Way too fast. Her eyes went wide. This wasn't right. Police officers didn't drive like that when they were just doing a traffic stop. She tried to start her car again, but it was too late. Morrison's patrol car slammed into the back of Rhonda's BMW. The impact was loud and violent. Metal crashed against metal. Glass broke. Rhonda's car shot forward like a rocket. She held onto the steering wheel as tight as she could, but the car was spinning. Everything was moving too fast. The world outside her windows became a blur of lights and darkness. She could hear the screech of tires on the road. Her BMW spun sideways and then backwards. It went off the road and crashed into a metal guardrail with another loud bang. The guardrail bent and twisted around the car like a giant metal snake. When everything finally stopped moving, Rhonda sat in her car, breathing hard. Steam was coming from under her hood. The front of her car was smashed against the guardrail. The back was completely destroyed where the police car had hit it. She moved her arms and legs carefully. Everything hurt, but nothing felt broken. Her years of training as a fighter had taught her how to protect herself when she fell or got hit. That training probably saved her life tonight. Morrison parked the patrol car and turned off the engine. He looked at Torres with a satisfied smile. "Oops," he said. "Looks like our celebrity friend was driving recklessly. She must have been drunk or on drugs. That's why she couldn't stop when we tried to pull her over." Torres stared at his partner in shock. "Jake, what have you done? You could have killed her." "But I didn't," Morrison said calmly. "She's fine. Look, she's moving around in there. And now she knows that being famous doesn't make her special. She's just another person who has to follow the rules like everyone else." Morrison got out of the patrol car and walked toward Rhonda's BMW. He was already practicing the story in his head. He would say that Rhonda was driving erratically, that she seemed drunk or high, that she refused to stop when they turned on their lights, that she tried to speed away and lost control of her car. It would be his word against hers. And he was a police officer with 12 years of experience. Who would believe a celebrity over a cop? Torres sat in the patrol car for a moment, trying to figure out what to do. He knew he should report what really happened, but he also knew that Morrison had friends in the department. Important friends. If Torres told the truth, Morrison would probably find a way to destroy his career. Finally, Torres got out of the car too. He walked slowly toward the crashed BMW, hoping that somehow this whole nightmare would turn out to be just a bad dream. Rhonda was unbuckling her seatbelt when she heard footsteps approaching her car. She looked up and saw 2 police officers walking toward her. The older one looked calm and confident. The younger one looked nervous and scared. Something about their behavior bothered her. If this had really been an accident, wouldn't they be running to help her? Wouldn't they be calling for an ambulance right away? Instead, they were walking slowly, like they had all the time in the world. That's when Rhonda noticed something else. Her dashboard camera was still recording. The little red light was blinking steadily. The camera had been running the whole time. She had installed the camera 6 months ago after her insurance company recommended it. They said it would help if she was ever in an accident. The camera recorded everything that happened in front of her car and behind it. It also recorded sound from inside the car. Rhonda smiled slightly. If these officers thought they could lie about what happened tonight, they were about to get a very unpleasant surprise. But she didn't let them know about the camera yet. Instead, she pretended to be confused and hurt. She wanted to see exactly what story they were going to tell. Morrison reached her car first. He knocked on the driver's side window. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can you roll down your window?" Rhonda rolled down the window halfway. "What happened? Why did you hit my car?" Morrison put on his most serious police officer face. "Ma'am, you were driving erratically. We tried to pull you over, but you refused to stop. You were speeding and swerving all over the road. Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs tonight?" Rhonda stared at him. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This officer was lying right to her face, and he was doing it so easily, like he had done it many times before. "I wasn't speeding," she said quietly. "I wasn't swerving. I pulled over as soon as I saw your lights." "You hit me on purpose," Morrison shook his head. "Ma'am, I think you might have hit your head in the accident. You're confused about what happened. We're going to call an ambulance to check you out." We're also going to need you to take a breath test to make sure you haven't been drinking. Torres finally reached the car. He looked at the damage and felt sick. The back of Rhonda's BMW was completely destroyed. It was a miracle she wasn't seriously hurt. Should I call for backup in an ambulance? Torres asked. Morrison nodded. Yes, and make sure you tell them we have a possible DUI situation. The driver was uncooperative and tried to flee when we attempted a traffic stop. As Torres walked back to their patrol car to make the radio calls, Morrison leaned closer to Rhonda's window. Listen carefully, he said in a low voice. You can make this easy or you can make this hard. Easy means you admit you were drinking tonight and you made a mistake. Hard means we charge you with drunk driving, reckless endangerment, and resisting arrest. Your choice. Rhonda looked into Morrison's cold blue eyes and realized she was dealing with a very dangerous man. A man who was willing to hurt innocent people to get what he wanted. A man who thought his badge gave him the right to do whatever he pleased. But Rhonda Rousey had never backed down from a fight in her life. And she wasn't about to start now. Rhonda took a deep breath and looked Morrison straight in the eyes. I want to see your badge number, she said calmly. And I want your partner's badge number too. Morrison's confident smile faded a little. Most people he dealt with were too scared or confused to ask questions like that. But Rhonda wasn't like most people. She had been in tough situations before. She knew how to stay calm when someone was trying to intimidate her. My badge number is 4127, Morrison said. He wasn't worried about giving her that information. He was planning to make sure his version of the story was the only one that mattered. Rhonda pulled out her phone and typed the number into her notes app. Then she looked at Torres, who was still standing by the patrol car talking on the radio. What about your partner? She asked. Officer Torres, badge number 7834, Morrison replied. He was getting annoyed with all her questions. Ma'am, you need to get out of the vehicle so we can properly assess your condition. Rhonda unbuckled her seatbelt and slowly got out of her car. She was sore all over, but she could move without too much pain. As she stood up, she secretly pressed a button on her phone to start recording audio. She wanted to capture everything these officers said. Morrison watched her carefully as she stood up. He was looking for signs that she might be drunk or on drugs. But Rhonda was standing perfectly straight. Her speech was clear. Her eyes were focused. She didn't look impaired at all. This was going to make his story harder to sell, but Morrison had been lying his way out of situations for years. He was confident he could handle one celebrity, no matter how famous she was. Ma'am, I need you to walk over here to the front of my patrol car, Morrison said. I want to conduct some field sobriety tests. Rhonda walked to where he pointed. As she moved, she looked around carefully. She noticed that there were skid marks on the road, but they were only from her car. There were no skid marks from the police car. That meant Morrison hadn't tried to stop before hitting her. He had hit her on purpose. She also noticed pieces of her car's taillight scattered on the road. The pattern of the broken glass would show exactly how the collision happened. It would prove that the police car had hit her while she was stopped, not while she was trying to run away. Torres finished his radio call and walked back over to them. His face was pale and he looked like he might throw up. Backup is on the way, he said quietly. And an ambulance, Morrison nodded. Good. Officer Torres, I need you to start taking pictures of the scene. Make sure you get photos of both vehicles and any evidence of reckless driving. Torres looked confused. What evidence of reckless driving? Morrison gave him a sharp look. The skid marks from where the suspect lost control of her vehicle while trying to flee from us. Torres looked at the road. The only skid marks he could see were from Rhonda's car after it got hit. There was no evidence that she had been driving recklessly before the collision. I don't see any, Torres started to say. Just take the pictures, Officer Torres. Morrison interrupted. His voice was cold and threatening. Torres understood. Morrison wanted him to take pictures that would support the false story. Photos that would make it look like Rhonda had been driving badly before they hit her. While Torres reluctantly got his camera, Morrison turned back to Rhonda. Ma'am, I need you to follow my finger with your eyes without moving your head. Rhonda did as he asked. Her eyes tracked his finger perfectly from left to right and up and down. Morrison frowned. This was another test for impairment, and she was passing it easily. Now I need you to walk in a straight line, heel to toe, for 9 steps. Then turn around and walk back. Rhonda walked the line perfectly. Her balance was flawless. Morrison was getting frustrated. How was he going to claim she was drunk when she was clearly sober? "Have you had anything to drink tonight?" he asked. "I had 1 glass of wine with dinner at 6 o'clock, Rhonda answered honestly. That was almost 6 hours ago. Morrison's eyes lit up. "Aha! So you admit you were drinking tonight?" 1 glass of wine 6 hours ago, Rhonda repeated. "My blood alcohol level would be 0 by now, and you know it." Morrison pulled out a breathalyzer device. "We'll let this machine decide that. Blow into this tube." Rhonda took the device and blew into it. After a few seconds, it beeped and showed a reading of 0.0, zero alcohol in her system. Morrison stared at the device like it had betrayed him. He shook it and looked at it again. Still 0. "The machine must be broken," he said. "Or maybe I'm telling the truth," Rhonda replied. By now, Torres had taken several pictures of the scene. Each photo made him feel worse about what was happening. The evidence clearly showed that Morrison had rear-ended Rhonda while she was stopped. There was no way to make it look like her fault. In the distance, they could hear sirens getting closer. The backup officers and ambulance were almost there. Morrison knew he was running out of time. He needed to get his story straight before the other officers arrived. "Officer Torres," he called out. "Come here. I need to brief you on what happened before backup arrives." Torres walked over reluctantly. He knew Morrison was about to ask him to lie, and he didn't know what he was going to do. "Here's what happened," Morrison said in a low voice. "We observed the suspect driving erratically on Sunset Boulevard. She was speeding and weaving between lanes. When we activated our emergency lights, she accelerated and tried to flee. She lost control of her vehicle during the pursuit and crashed into the guardrail." "Got it?" Torres looked at Rhonda, who was standing close enough to hear everything Morrison was saying. She was watching them both carefully, and Torres could see the intelligence in her eyes. She knew exactly what was happening. "Jake," Torres whispered. "She's recording us." "Look at her phone." Morrison looked and saw that Rhonda's phone was indeed active, but he couldn't tell if she was recording or just taking notes. "Give me your phone," Morrison ordered Rhonda. "No," she replied calmly. "I said give me your phone. It's evidence in this investigation." "You can get a warrant for my phone if you think it contains evidence," Rhonda said. "Until then, I'm keeping it." Morrison took a step toward her, but Rhonda didn't back away. She had faced much scarier opponents in the octagon. One corrupt cop wasn't going to intimidate her. The sirens were getting very close now. Morrison could see flashing lights coming around the corner. "Last chance, Torres," Morrison said urgently. "Are you with me or against me? Because if you're against me, your career in this department is over." Torres looked at Morrison, then at Rhonda, then at the evidence scattered all over the road. He thought about his dream of being a good police officer. He thought about all the people he wanted to help. He thought about his family and how proud they were when he graduated from the police academy. Then he thought about what would happen if he helped Morrison cover up this crime. How many more people would Morrison hurt if Torres stayed quiet? How many more innocent people would suffer because Torres was too scared to do the right thing? 2 more patrol cars pulled up, followed by an ambulance. 4 officers got out of the cars and started walking toward them. Morrison put on his best professional face. "Sergeant Williams," he called out to the lead officer. "We have a DUI suspect who tried to flee during a traffic stop. She lost control and crashed into the guardrail." Sergeant Williams was a 20-year veteran of the force. He had seen everything, and he had a good nose for when something didn't smell right. He looked at the scene carefully, noting the position of the vehicles and the damage patterns. "Anyone hurt?" he asked. "The suspect has minor injuries," Morrison replied. "The paramedics should check her out." 2 paramedics approached Rhonda with their medical kit. "Ma'am, are you injured? Any pain or difficulty breathing?" "I'm sore, but I think I'm okay," Rhonda told them. "I'd like to be checked out at the hospital just to be sure." While the paramedics examined Rhonda, Sergeant Williams walked around the scene. He noticed the same things Rhonda had noticed. The skid marks were all from her car. The damage pattern suggested a rear-end collision while her car was stationary. The broken glass and debris were spread in a way that didn't match Morrison's story. "Morrison," Sergeant Williams called out. "Walk me through exactly what happened." Morrison launched into his prepared story. He talked about Rhonda driving erratically. He claimed she had accelerated when they tried to pull her over. He said she lost control during the pursuit. But as Morrison talked, Sergeant Williams kept looking at the evidence. Nothing Morrison was saying matched what the scene was telling him. Torres stood nearby, listening to his partner lie to their supervisor. His hands were shaking and his stomach felt like it was full of rocks. When Morrison finished his story, Sergeant Williams turned to Torres. "Officer Torres, do you concur with Officer Morrison's account of events?" This was it. This was the moment Torres had to choose between doing what was easy and doing what was right. He looked at Morrison, who was staring at him with cold, threatening eyes. He looked at Rhonda, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and determination. He looked at Sergeant Williams, who was waiting for an answer. Torres opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was terrified of what would happen next, no matter what he chose to say. Torres took a deep breath and looked Sergeant Williams in the eye. "I need to speak with you privately, sir," he said quietly. Morrison's face went white. He knew that if Torres told the truth, his career was over. Worse than that, he could go to prison. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here," Morrison said quickly. "We're all on the same team." But Sergeant Williams had been a cop long enough to recognize when something was wrong. He could see the fear in Torres's eyes and the desperation in Morrison's voice. "Morrison, go help the other officers with traffic control," Williams ordered. "Torres, you come with me." Williams led Torres away from the crash scene over to his patrol car. He opened the passenger door and motioned for Torres to sit down. "Okay, son," Williams said gently. "Tell me what really happened here." Torres looked back toward Morrison, who was watching them from across the street. His hands were clenched into fists. "Sergeant, Torres started, then stopped. He was terrified, but he knew he couldn't live with himself if he stayed quiet. "Morrison hit her on purpose," Torres whispered. "She was stopped, waiting for us to approach her car. Morrison backed up and then rammed into her. He planned the whole thing." Williams felt his stomach drop. In 20 years as a police officer, he had seen a lot of bad things, but he had never seen a cop deliberately hurt an innocent person. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Williams asked. "Yes, sir. I watched him do it. He's been angry about celebrities ever since his brother got hurt in that motorcycle accident. When he saw it was Ronda Rousey, he said he wanted to teach her a lesson." Williams looked over at Morrison, who was now talking to the other officers. Morrison was probably telling them the same false story he had told Williams. "Why didn't you stop him?" Williams asked. Torres felt tears in his eyes. "I was scared, sir. Morrison said he would destroy my career if I didn't go along with him. I know that's not an excuse, but I'm still new and I didn't know what to do." Williams put his hand on Torres's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing now, son. That's what matters." Williams walked back to the crash scene and pulled Morrison aside. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" Morrison asked, trying to sound casual. "About the fact that your story doesn't match the evidence, and it doesn't match what your partner just told me." Morrison's face turned red with anger. "That rookie doesn't know what he's talking about. He's probably scared and confused. You know how new officers get after their first big incident?" "This isn't Torres's first incident," Williams replied, and he seemed pretty clear about what he saw. Meanwhile, the paramedics had finished examining Rhonda. She had some bruises and sore muscles, but no serious injuries. They recommended that she go to the hospital for x-rays just to be safe. "I'll go to the hospital," Rhonda said, "but first I want to make sure someone takes a proper report about what happened here." One of the other officers, Detective Miller, approached her with a notepad. "Ma'am, I understand you want to file a report. Can you tell me your version of events?" Rhonda told Miller exactly what had happened. How the police car had followed her for several blocks. How she pulled over when she saw the flashing lights. How Morrison had backed up and then deliberately crashed into her. Miller listened carefully and took detailed notes. Like Sergeant Williams, he was bothered by the inconsistencies between the officer's story and what the evidence showed. "Ma'am, do you have any proof of what you're claiming?" Miller asked. Rhonda smiled for the first time since the crash. "As a matter of fact, I do." She explained about her dashboard camera. Miller's eyes lit up. Dashboard camera footage would show exactly what happened. "Can we view that footage now?" Miller asked. "I'd prefer to have my lawyer present when we review it," Rhonda said. "But yes, the footage exists and it shows everything." By now, news vans were starting to arrive at the scene. Someone had recognized Rhonda and called the local TV stations. Reporters were setting up cameras and trying to get close enough to ask questions. Sergeant Williams knew this was about to become a very public situation. If Morrison had really done what Torres claimed, it would be a huge scandal for the police department. Williams called his supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, and explained the situation. Rodriguez immediately ordered that both Morrison and Torres be taken off duty, pending an investigation. I want internal affairs involved immediately, Rodriguez said, and I want that dashboard camera footage secured as evidence. Williams walked back to where Morrison was standing. Officer Morrison, I need your badge and gun. You're suspended pending an investigation. Morrison's face went from red to purple. You can't be serious. You're going to believe some celebrity over a 12-year veteran? I'm going to believe the evidence, Williams replied. And right now the evidence doesn't support your story. Morrison looked around wildly. The other officers were all watching him. The reporters were filming from across the street. His whole world was falling apart. This is ridiculous, Morrison shouted. She probably bribed Torres to lie for her. You know how these Hollywood people work. But even as he said it, Morrison knew it was over. The evidence was against him. His partner had told the truth. And somewhere in Rhonda's car was a video that would prove his guilt. Williams took Morrison's badge and gun. You'll receive notice about when to report for your internal affairs interview. Until then, you're not to have any contact with any witnesses or evidence in this case. Morrison stormed off toward his personal car, which another officer had driven to the scene. As he left, he glared at Torres with pure hatred in his eyes. Torres felt a mixture of relief and terror. He had done the right thing, but he knew Morrison would never forgive him. And Morrison had friends in the department who might try to get revenge. The ambulance took Rhonda to the hospital for x-rays. Before she left, she gave Detective Miller her lawyer's contact information. My attorney's name is Marcus Williams, she said. He'll coordinate with you about reviewing the dashboard camera footage. At the hospital, Rhonda was examined by Dr. Sarah Chen, an emergency room physician. Dr. Chen found that Rhonda had bruised ribs and some muscle strain, but no broken bones or serious injuries. You're very lucky, Dr. Chen said. A collision like that could have been much worse. I stayed in shape for a reason, Rhonda replied. I guess all that training paid off. While Rhonda was at the hospital, her lawyer, Marcus Williams, was already working. Marcus was one of the best criminal defense attorneys in Los Angeles. He had represented many high-profile clients over the years. Marcus arrived at the hospital within an hour of Rhonda's call. He was a tall, thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had been practicing law for 25 years and had seen every kind of case imaginable. Tell me everything, Marcus said when he got to Rhonda's hospital room. Rhonda explained the whole incident, from the moment she first noticed the police car following her to the crash and Morrison's threats afterward. Marcus listened carefully and took notes. Do you really have dashboard camera footage of the whole thing? He asked. Every second of it, Rhonda confirmed. Video and audio, Marcus smiled grimly. Then we have them cold. The question is how far up this corruption goes. Back at the police station, Captain Rodriguez was meeting with Detective Sarah Chen from Internal Affairs. Detective Chen was known for her thorough investigations and her refusal to cover up police misconduct. Chen was 38 years old and had been investigating police corruption for 8 years. She was tough, smart, and completely honest. Other officers respected her but also feared her because they knew she would follow the evidence wherever it led. What do we know so far? Chen asked Rodriguez. Rodriguez filled her in on the basic facts. We have conflicting stories from the two officers involved. We have physical evidence that doesn't match the senior officer's account, and we have a civilian who claims to have video proof of deliberate assault. Chen nodded. I'll need to interview both officers separately. I'll also need to review that dashboard camera footage as soon as possible. The victim's lawyer is coordinating with Detective Miller about the footage, Rodriguez said. They should have it available tomorrow. Chen was already making a list of everything she needed to investigate. She would examine the crash scene again in daylight. She would interview all the officers who responded to the call. She would review Morrison's personnel file and disciplinary history. Most importantly, she would get the truth about what happened that night. Chen had a feeling this case was going to be bigger than anyone realized. If Morrison had really attacked Rhonda Rousey deliberately, it wouldn't just be assault. It would be assault under color of authority, which was a federal crime. The FBI might get involved. And if Morrison had been covering up misconduct for years, there might be other victims who had been too scared to come forward. As Chen began her investigation, she made herself a promise. No matter how powerful Morrison's friends were, no matter how much pressure she faced to go easy on him, she would find the truth. Justice wasn't just for ordinary people. It was for everyone. including celebrities who got attacked by corrupt cops. The investigation was just beginning, but Chen was determined to see it through to the end. Torres took a deep breath and looked Sergeant Williams in the eye. "I need to speak with you privately, sir," he said quietly. Morrison's face went white. He knew that if Torres told the truth, his career was over. Worse than that, he could go to prison. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here," Morrison said quickly. "We're all on the same team." But Sergeant Williams had been a cop long enough to recognize when something was wrong. He could see the fear in Torres's eyes and the desperation in Morrison's voice. "Morrison, go help the other officers with traffic control," Williams ordered. "Torres, you come with me." Williams led Torres away from the crash scene over to his patrol car. He opened the passenger door and motioned for Torres to sit down. "Okay, son," Williams said gently. "Tell me what really happened here." Torres looked back toward Morrison, who was watching them from across the street. His hands were clenched into fists. "Sergeant, Torres started, then stopped. He was terrified, but he knew he couldn't live with himself if he stayed quiet. "Morrison hit her on purpose," Torres whispered. "She was stopped, waiting for us to approach her car. Morrison backed up and then rammed into her. He planned the whole thing." Williams felt his stomach drop. In 20 years as a police officer, he had seen a lot of bad things. But he had never seen a cop deliberately hurt an innocent person. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Williams asked. "Yes, sir. I watched him do it. He's been angry about celebrities ever since his brother got hurt in that motorcycle accident. When he saw it was Ronda Rousey, he said he wanted to teach her a lesson." Williams looked over at Morrison, who was now talking to the other officers. Morrison was probably telling them the same false story he had told Williams. "Why didn't you stop him?" Williams asked. Torres felt tears in his eyes. "I was scared, sir. Morrison said he would destroy my career if I didn't go along with him. I know that's not an excuse, but I'm still new and I didn't know what to do." Williams put his hand on Torres's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing now, son. That's what matters." Williams walked back to the crash scene and pulled Morrison aside. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" Morrison asked, trying to sound casual. "About the fact that your story doesn't match the evidence, and it doesn't match what your partner just told me." Morrison's face turned red with anger. That rookie doesn't know what he's talking about. He's probably scared and confused. You know how new officers get after their first big incident. "This isn't Torres's first incident," Williams replied, and he seemed pretty clear about what he saw. Meanwhile, the paramedics had finished examining Rhonda. She had some bruises and sore muscles, but no serious injuries. They recommended that she go to the hospital for x-rays just to be safe. "I'll go to the hospital," Rhonda said, "but first I want to make sure someone takes a proper report about what happened here." One of the other officers, Detective Miller, approached her with a notepad. "Ma'am, I understand you want to file a report. Can you tell me your version of events?" Rhonda told Miller exactly what had happened. How the police car had followed her for several blocks. How she pulled over when she saw the flashing lights. How Morrison had backed up and then deliberately crashed into her. Miller listened carefully and took detailed notes. Like Sergeant Williams, he was bothered by the inconsistencies between the officer's story and what the evidence showed. "Ma'am, do you have any proof of what you're claiming?" Miller asked. Rhonda smiled for the first time since the crash. "As a matter of fact, I do." She explained about her dashboard camera. Miller's eyes lit up. Dashboard camera footage would show exactly what happened. "Can we view that footage now?" Miller asked. "I'd prefer to have my lawyer present when we review it," Rhonda said. "But yes, the footage exists and it shows everything." By now, news vans were starting to arrive at the scene. Someone had recognized Rhonda and called the local TV stations. Reporters were setting up cameras and trying to get close enough to ask questions. Sergeant Williams knew this was about to become a very public situation. If Morrison had really done what Torres claimed, it would be a huge scandal for the police department. Williams called his supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, and explained the situation. Rodriguez immediately ordered that both Morrison and Torres be taken off duty pending an investigation. "I want internal affairs involved immediately," Rodriguez said, "and I want that dashboard camera footage secured as evidence." Williams walked back to where Morrison was standing. "Officer Morrison, I need your badge and gun. You're suspended pending an investigation." Morrison's face went from red to purple. "You can't be serious. You're going to believe some celebrity over a 12-year veteran?" "I'm going to believe the evidence," Williams replied. And right now the evidence doesn't support your story. Morrison looked around wildly. The other officers were all watching him. The reporters were filming from across the street. His whole world was falling apart. "This is ridiculous," Morrison shouted. "She probably bribed Torres to lie for her. You know how these Hollywood people work." But even as he said it, Morrison knew it was over. The evidence was against him. His partner had told the truth. And somewhere in Rhonda's car was a video that would prove his guilt. Williams took Morrison's badge and gun. "You'll receive notice about when to report for your internal affairs interview. Until then, you're not to have any contact with any witnesses or evidence in this case." Morrison stormed off toward his personal car, which another officer had driven to the scene. As he left, he glared at Torres with pure hatred in his eyes. Torres felt a mixture of relief and terror. He had done the right thing, but he knew Morrison would never forgive him. And Morrison had friends in the department who might try to get revenge. The ambulance took Rhonda to the hospital for x-rays. Before she left, she gave Detective Miller her lawyer's contact information. "My attorney's name is Marcus Williams," she said. "He'll coordinate with you about reviewing the dashboard camera footage." At the hospital, Rhonda was examined by Dr. Sarah Chen, an emergency room physician. Dr. Chen found that Rhonda had bruised ribs and some muscle strain, but no broken bones or serious injuries. "You're very lucky," Dr. Chen said. "A collision like that could have been much worse?" "I stayed in shape for a reason," Rhonda replied. "I guess all that training paid off." While Rhonda was at the hospital, her lawyer Marcus Williams was already working. Marcus was one of the best criminal defense attorneys in Los Angeles. He had represented many high-profile clients over the years. Marcus arrived at the hospital within an hour of Rhonda's call. He was a tall, thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had been practicing law for 25 years and had seen every kind of case imaginable. "Tell me everything," Marcus said when he got to Rhonda's hospital room. Rhonda explained the whole incident, from the moment she first noticed the police car following her to the crash and Morrison's threats afterward. Marcus listened carefully and took notes. "Do you really have dashboard camera footage of the whole thing?" he asked. "Every second of it," Rhonda confirmed. "Video and audio," Marcus smiled grimly. "Then we have them cold. The question is, how far up this corruption goes." Back at the police station, Captain Rodriguez was meeting with Detective Sarah Chen from Internal Affairs. Detective Chen was known for her thorough investigations and her refusal to cover up police misconduct. Chen was 38 years old and had been investigating police corruption for 8 years. She was tough, smart, and completely honest. Other officers respected her but also feared her, because they knew she would follow the evidence wherever it led. "What do we know so far?" Chen asked Rodriguez. Rodriguez filled her in on the basic facts. "We have conflicting stories from the 2 officers involved. We have physical evidence that doesn't match the senior officer's account. And we have a civilian who claims to have video proof of deliberate assault." Chen nodded. "I'll need to interview both officers separately. I'll also need to review that dashboard camera footage as soon as possible. The victim's lawyer is coordinating with Detective Miller about the footage," Rodriguez said. "They should have it available tomorrow." Chen was already making a list of everything she needed to investigate. She would examine the crash scene again in daylight. She would interview all the officers who responded to the call. She would review Morrison's personnel file and disciplinary history. Most importantly, she would get the truth about what happened that night. Chen had a feeling this case was going to be bigger than anyone realized. If Morrison had really attacked Rhonda Rousey deliberately, it wouldn't just be assault. It would be assault under color of authority, which was a federal crime. The FBI might get involved. And if Morrison had been covering up misconduct for years, there might be other victims who had been too scared to come forward. As Chen began her investigation, she made herself a promise. No matter how powerful Morrison's friends were, no matter how much pressure she faced to go easy on him, she would find the truth. Justice wasn't just for ordinary people. It was for everyone, including celebrities who got attacked by corrupt cops. The investigation was just beginning, but Chen was determined to see it through to the end. The Internal Affairs conference room was packed with people. Detective Chen sat at the head of the table with her files spread out in front of her. District Attorney James Harrison was there with 2 of his prosecutors. FBI Agent Lisa Park represented the federal government. Police Chief Michael Thompson looked uncomfortable as he waited for the meeting to begin. Morrison sat at one end of the table with his lawyer and union representative. He had hired David Walsh, one of the most expensive criminal defense attorneys in the city. Walsh was known for getting cops out of trouble no matter what they had done. Torres sat on the opposite side of the room with his own lawyer. He looked nervous but determined. Over the past 2 weeks, he had told Chen everything he knew about Morrison's behavior. Chen had insisted that Rhonda and her lawyer Marcus Williams be present as well. This wasn't just an internal police matter anymore. It was a criminal case with federal implications. "Let's begin," Chen said, looking directly at Morrison. "Officer Morrison, you are here to answer questions about the incident that occurred 2 weeks ago involving Ms. Rhonda Rousey. You have the right to remain silent, but if you choose to speak, anything you say can be used against you in criminal proceedings." Morrison's lawyer leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Morrison nodded and sat back in his chair with his arms crossed. "My client will not be answering any questions today," Walsh announced. "We believe this investigation is biased and politically motivated." Chen had expected this response. "That's your right," she said, "but I'm going to present the evidence we've gathered, and you're going to listen to every word of it." Chen opened her laptop and connected it to the large TV screen on the wall. "Let's start with the dashboard camera footage from Ms. Rousey's vehicle." The room fell silent as the video began to play. Everyone could hear Morrison's voice clearly as he talked about teaching Rhonda a lesson. They watched him follow her car for several blocks. They saw Rhonda pull over and stop. Then they watched Morrison back up and deliberately crash into her car. When the video ended, the room was completely quiet. Morrison's face had gone pale. His lawyer was scribbling notes frantically. "That video clearly shows premeditated assault," District Attorney Harrison said. "Officer Morrison planned this attack and carried it out while on duty." Agent Park nodded. "It also shows a federal civil rights violation. Morrison used his position as a police officer to deprive Ms. Rousey of her constitutional rights." Chief Thompson looked like he wanted to disappear. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "If I had known Morrison was capable of something like this." Chen turned to the next piece of evidence. "Officer Torres, would you please tell everyone what you witnessed that night?" Torres cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was shaky at first, but it got stronger as he continued. Morrison said he wanted to teach her a lesson because she was a celebrity. He said famous people think they're above the law. When she pulled over, he backed up and hit her on purpose. Then he told me we were going to say she was drunk and trying to run away from us. Morrison's lawyer objected. "Officer Torres is just trying to save his own career by blaming my client." But Chen was ready for this. Actually, Officer Torres came forward voluntarily. He could have stuck with the false story and probably gotten away with it. Instead, he chose to tell the truth. Chen pulled out another file. "Let's talk about Officer Morrison's history. In 12 years on the force, he has been the subject of 14 excessive force complaints. 3 of those resulted in lawsuits that the city settled for a total of $1.2 million. She spread Morrison's disciplinary records across the table. Every time, his supervisors gave him positive performance reviews despite the complaints. Someone has been protecting him for years." Chief Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had been one of those supervisors. Chen wasn't finished. "Officer Torres has also provided information about at least 6 other cases where Morrison used excessive force and then lied in his police reports." She handed out copies of Torres's detailed statement. In each case, Morrison threatened Torres to keep him quiet. "This shows a pattern of corruption and abuse of power." Agent Park leaned forward. "This is exactly the kind of systemic police misconduct that the Justice Department is working to eliminate. We'll be conducting our own investigation into the entire department." Morrison finally spoke up. "This is all lies," he shouted. "Torres is making this up to get revenge on me." His lawyer tried to quiet him, but Morrison was too angry to listen. "That celebrity bitch thinks she can destroy my career," Morrison continued. "She probably paid Torres to lie about me." The room erupted. District Attorney Harrison slammed his hand on the table. "Officer Morrison, you're digging yourself into a deeper hole with every word you say." But Morrison couldn't stop himself. Years of anger and resentment came pouring out. "You want to know the truth? Fine, she had it coming. All these Hollywood types think they're better than everyone else. My brother is in a wheelchair because of people like her. Morrison's lawyer was frantically trying to get his client to stop talking, but Morrison shoved him away. Yeah, I hit her car. So what? Maybe now she'll think twice before acting like she owns the road. The room fell silent again. Morrison had just confessed to everything on the record in front of witnesses. Chen turned to Danny Morrison, who had been sitting quietly in the corner. Mr. Morrison, would you like to respond to what your brother just said? Danny rolled his wheelchair forward. His face was sad but determined. Jake, he said, looking directly at his brother, I've told you 100 times that the actor didn't cause my accident. I was following too close. I was driving recklessly. It was my fault, not his. Morrison stared at his brother in shock. Danny, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Danny interrupted. You've been using my accident as an excuse to hurt innocent people, and I won't let you do it anymore. Danny pulled out his phone and showed the text message Morrison had sent him the night of the attack. You sent me this message bragging about what you did. You weren't protecting me or getting justice for me. You were just being a bully with a badge. Morrison's world was collapsing around him. His brother, the person he thought he was protecting, had just turned against him. The evidence was overwhelming. His confession was on the record. Walsh finally managed to get Morrison's attention. Jake, stop talking right now. Don't say another word, but it was too late. Morrison had said more than enough to convict himself. District Attorney Harrison stood up. Based on the evidence presented here today, I will be filing criminal charges against Officer Morrison. The charges will include assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, filing false police reports, and violation of civil rights under color of authority. Agent Park added, the FBI will also be pursuing federal charges and will be investigating every complaint that was filed against Morrison over the past 12 years. Chief Thompson looked at Morrison with disgust. Officer Morrison, you are hereby terminated from the Los Angeles Police Department. Your badge and pension are revoked effective immediately. Morrison sat in stunned silence. In the span of 1 hour, he had lost his job, his freedom, and his brother's respect. Chen turned to Torres. Officer Torres, thank you for your honesty and courage. You will not face any disciplinary action. In fact, I'm recommending you for a commendation for doing the right thing under difficult circumstances. Torres felt tears of relief in his eyes. Thank you, ma'am. I just want to be a good police officer. Rhonda had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now she spoke up. I want everyone in this room to know that I don't hate all police officers because of what Morrison did. I know that most cops are good people who want to help their communities, but when bad cops are protected by their supervisors, it hurts everyone. She looked directly at Chief Thompson. I hope this case will lead to real changes in how complaints against officers are handled. No one should be above the law, especially people who are sworn to enforce it. As the meeting ended, Morrison was led away in handcuffs. He would be spending the night in jail just like any other criminal. Torres walked over to Rhonda. Ma'am, I'm sorry about what happened to you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to speak up. Rhonda smiled at him. You did speak up when it mattered most. That takes real courage. Chen packed up her files, satisfied with the day's work. Morrison would go to prison. His supervisors would face their own investigations. And maybe, just maybe, other corrupt cops would think twice before abusing their power. Justice had been served, but Chen knew this was just the beginning. The real work of reforming the police department was still ahead of them. 2 months after the confrontation in the Internal Affairs conference room, Morrison sat in a county jail cell waiting for his trial to begin. His expensive lawyer had tried every legal trick in the book, but the evidence against Morrison was too strong. The dashboard camera footage had been shown on every news channel in the country. Morrison's confession had been played so many times that everyone knew the words by heart. There was no way to deny what he had done. Walsh, Morrison's lawyer, visited him in jail to discuss a plea deal. The district attorney was offering Morrison a chance to plead guilty in exchange for a shorter sentence. If you take the deal, you'll serve 3 years in prison, Walsh explained. If we go to trial and lose, you could get 10 years or more. Morrison stared at the wall of his cell. 3 months ago, he had been a respected police officer with 12 years of experience. Now he was facing years in prison. What about my pension? Morrison asked. Gone, Walsh replied. The city voted to revoke your pension and all benefits. He'll get nothing. Morrison felt his anger rising again. This was all Rhonda Rousey's fault. If she had just taken her punishment quietly, none of this would have happened. "I'm not pleading guilty to anything," Morrison said stubbornly. "I want a trial. Let a jury decide." Walsh shook his head. His client was making a huge mistake, but he couldn't force Morrison to be smart. Meanwhile, Torres was adjusting to his new life as a police officer with a conscience. The media had painted him as a hero for speaking up, but Torres didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had almost made a terrible mistake. His fellow officers treated him with a mixture of respect and suspicion. Some admired him for doing the right thing. Others worried that he might report them if they bent the rules. Torres didn't care what they thought. He had learned that being a good cop meant more than just following orders. It meant standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. Detective Chen had been promoted to lieutenant for her excellent work on the Morrison case. She was now in charge of a new unit that investigated police misconduct. The police chief had given her a free hand to clean up the department. Chen's first target was the group of supervisors who had protected Morrison for years. She found evidence that Lieutenant Brad Stevens had buried at least 8 complaints against Morrison. Stevens had also covered up misconduct by other officers under his command. Stevens was forced to retire in disgrace. 2 other supervisors were demoted and transferred to desk jobs. The message was clear. Protecting bad cops was no longer acceptable. Agent Park from the FBI had opened a federal investigation into the entire Los Angeles Police Department. Her team was reviewing hundreds of cases where officers had been accused of excessive force or civil rights violations. The investigation had already led to charges against 3 other officers. More arrests were expected as the probe continued. Rhonda's civil rights lawsuit against the city was moving forward as well. Her lawyer Marcus Williams had filed for damages that could reach millions of dollars. But Rhonda had made it clear that money wasn't her primary goal. "I want the city to use this case as a wake-up call," Rhonda said at a press conference. "I want real reforms that will protect other people from going through what I went through." Marcus had worked with city attorneys to create a settlement agreement that included major policy changes. The police department would be required to install dashboard cameras in all patrol cars. Officers would receive additional training on civil rights and proper use of force. A civilian review board would be created to investigate complaints against officers. Most importantly, there would be real consequences for supervisors who covered up misconduct. No more sweeping problems under the rug. The settlement agreement was worth $4.5 million, but Rhonda donated every penny to organizations that worked on police reform and victims' rights. Morrison's trial began on a cold Tuesday morning in November. The courthouse was packed with reporters and spectators. Morrison sat at the defendant's table looking older and more tired than he had just a few months earlier. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Maria Santos, opened the case with the dashboard camera footage. The jury watched in silence as Morrison deliberately crashed into Rhonda's car. "Ladies and gentlemen," Santos said, "this video shows you everything you need to know about this case." The defendant used his position as a police officer to assault an innocent woman. He then tried to cover up his crime with lies and threats. Walsh tried to argue that Morrison had been under emotional stress because of his brother's accident. He claimed that Morrison's actions were out of character and that he deserved mercy. But when Torres testified about Morrison's history of misconduct, it became clear that the attack on Rhonda was not an isolated incident. Morrison had been abusing his power for years. Danny Morrison's testimony was the most damaging of all. When he explained that his brother had been wrong about the cause of his accident, Morrison's entire justification for his hatred of celebrities crumbled. "My brother has been living in a fantasy world," Danny said sadly. "He needed someone to blame for what happened to me, so he picked celebrities. But the truth is that I caused my own accident." The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with a guilty verdict on all charges. Morrison was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, filing false police reports, and civil rights violations. When the verdict was read, Morrison showed no emotion. He sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead. But inside, he was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had done. The judge sentenced Morrison to 5 years in state prison and 3 additional years for the federal civil rights violation. He would serve a total of 8 years behind bars. "Officer Morrison," the judge said during sentencing, "you took an oath to protect and serve the public. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon to hurt an innocent person. Your actions have damaged the reputation of all honest police officers." As Morrison was led away in shackles, he looked back at the courtroom one last time. He saw Danny sitting in his wheelchair, tears streaming down his face. He saw Torres in his police uniform, looking relieved that justice had been done. And he saw Ronda Rousey, the woman whose life he had tried to destroy. She was watching him with an expression that wasn't angry or vindictive. She looked sad for him, like she understood that he had thrown away everything good in his life for nothing. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, Morrison felt truly ashamed of what he had done. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Ronda and her lawyer. She made a brief statement about the verdict. "I'm glad that Officer Morrison will face consequences for his actions," she said, "but I hope this case will lead to bigger changes that prevent other officers from abusing their power." A reporter asked if she felt sorry for Morrison. Ronda thought for a moment before answering. "I feel sorry for his brother Danny, who has to live with the knowledge that his accident was used to justify hurting innocent people. I feel sorry for Officer Torres, who was threatened into staying quiet about corruption. And yes, I feel sorry for Morrison too, because he destroyed his own life for no good reason." Torres was also at the courthouse, wearing his dress uniform. He had been promoted to detective the week before, in recognition of his courage and integrity. "Today shows that the truth always comes out eventually," Torres said when reporters asked for his reaction. "I'm proud to be a police officer, and I'm proud to work for a department that holds its officers accountable." Detective Chen watched the news coverage from her office at police headquarters. She was already working on her next case, investigating another officer who had been accused of taking bribes. The Morrison case had changed everything. Officers knew they were being watched more carefully. Supervisors knew they couldn't protect bad cops anymore. And the public was beginning to trust the police again, because they could see that the department was serious about reform. Chen's phone rang. It was another officer calling to report misconduct by a colleague. 6 months ago, that officer would have stayed quiet. Now people were speaking up when they saw wrongdoing. That was real progress. Morrison began his prison sentence at a medium security facility in Central California. He was placed in protective custody because former police officers were often targeted by other inmates. He spent his days in a small cell, thinking about the choices that had led him there. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand that his anger toward celebrities had been misdirected. They weren't the enemy. His own hatred and pride had been the real enemies. Prison counselors worked with Morrison to help him understand his actions. For the first time in years, he started to see clearly. He realized that he had hurt not just Ronda, but also his brother, his partner, and himself. 8 months into his sentence, Morrison wrote a letter to Ronda. He apologized for what he had done and thanked her for not seeking revenge against him. He asked for her forgiveness not because he deserved it, but because he needed to try to make things right. Ronda never responded to the letter, but she kept it. Someday, when Morrison got out of prison, she might be ready to forgive him, but that day was still far away. The Morrison case had become a symbol of what could happen when good people stood up to corruption. 6 months after Morrison was sentenced to prison, the changes in the Los Angeles Police Department were visible everywhere. Dashboard cameras had been installed in every patrol car. Officers wore body cameras that couldn't be turned off. The Civilian Review Board was investigating complaints more thoroughly than ever before. Detective Rick Torres stood in front of a classroom full of new police recruits at the academy. He was there to teach them about integrity and the importance of speaking up when they witnessed misconduct. 2 years ago, I was in your position, Torres told the young men and women. I was excited to be a police officer. I wanted to help people and make my community safer. He paused and looked around the room. Every face was paying attention, but I also learned something that wasn't in any textbook. I learned that sometimes the biggest test of a police officer isn't dealing with criminals. It's dealing with other police officers who forget what their badge really means. Torres told them about the night Morrison attacked Ronda Rousey. He explained how scared he had been to speak up. He talked about the pressure he felt to go along with Morrison's lies. I almost made the worst mistake of my life that night, Torres said. I almost chose my career over doing what was right. Don't ever make that choice. Your integrity is worth more than any job. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Detective Torres, what advice would you give us if we see another officer doing something wrong? Torres smiled. Report it immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to handle it yourself. The department has created new systems to protect officers who report misconduct. You won't be punished for doing the right thing. After his presentation, Torres drove to the courthouse where he was meeting with Lieutenant Chen. She had been promoted again and was now in charge of all internal investigations for the department. How did the academy presentation go? Chen asked as they walked to her office. Good, Torres replied. These new recruits seem different. They're asking harder questions about ethics and accountability. Chen nodded. That's what we want. We need officers who think for themselves, not just follow orders blindly. They sat down in Chen's office, which was covered with case files and investigation reports. Her unit had been busy cleaning up years of corruption and misconduct. I have some good news, Chen said. The FBI investigation is finally wrapping up. Agent Park says they've identified and prosecuted all the major problems in the department. Torres felt relieved. The federal investigation had been hanging over everyone's head for months. Officers had been worried about their careers and their reputations. What about the supervisors who protected Morrison? Torres asked. 3 of them have been criminally charged. 2 more have been forced to retire. The message is clear. Protecting bad cops will destroy your career. Chen opened a file on her desk. I also wanted to update you on Morrison's case. He's been in prison for 18 months now. His brother Danny says Morrison is finally getting counseling for his anger issues. Torres was glad to hear that Morrison was getting help, but he still felt angry about what had happened. Morrison's actions had hurt so many people, including Torres himself. Do you think he'll ever understand what he did? Torres asked. Chen shrugged. Maybe people can change even in prison, but understanding what you did wrong is just the first step. Making up for it takes a lifetime. Across town, Ronda Rousey was at a community center in South Los Angeles, speaking to a group of teenagers about overcoming adversity. The center had been built with some of the money from her settlement with the city. Life is going to knock you down sometimes, Ronda told the kids. Bad things will happen that aren't your fault. The question is, what are you going to do about it? A teenage boy raised his hand. Ms. Rousey, weren't you angry when that cop hit you? Didn't you want to get revenge? Ronda thought about the question carefully. Of course I was angry, she said. I was furious. But I learned something important that night. Anger can destroy you if you let it control your actions, or you can use that anger to fuel positive change. She gestured toward the new community center around them. This building exists because I chose to turn my anger into action. Instead of just being mad, I worked to make sure what happened to me couldn't happen to other people. A young girl in the back raised her hand. But how do you forgive someone who tried to hurt you? Ronda was quiet for a moment. This was still the hardest question for her to answer. Forgiveness isn't about saying that what someone did was okay, she finally said. It's about not letting their actions control your life anymore. I'm still working on forgiving Officer Morrison. Maybe someday I'll get there. After her talk, Ronda drove to her lawyer's office for a meeting about the Morrison case aftermath. Marcus Williams had news about the civil rights reforms that had grown out of her lawsuit. The Department of Justice is using our case as a model for police reform nationwide, Marcus told her. 12 other cities have adopted similar policies because of what happened to you. Ronda felt proud that her terrible experience was helping other people. What about the other victims of police misconduct? Are they getting justice too? Many of them are, Marcus replied. Lieutenant Chen's unit has reopened dozens of old cases. They've found evidence of misconduct that was covered up for years. Several victims are finally getting the justice they deserved. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. I also have an update on Morrison himself. His prison counselor says he's made significant progress. He's been attending therapy sessions and anger management classes. Ronda was surprised to hear this. She had tried not to think about Morrison much over the past year and a half. He wrote you another letter, Marcus continued, handing her an envelope. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. Ronda took the letter but didn't open it immediately. She had received Morrison's first letter over a year ago, but had never responded. She wasn't sure she was ready to read another one. Meanwhile, in his prison cell, Morrison was writing in a journal that his counselor had given him. Writing about his feelings was part of his therapy program. Today marks 18 months since I was sentenced, Morrison wrote. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why I did it. I understand now that I wasn't really angry at celebrities. I was angry at myself for not being able to protect my brother. Morrison had been meeting with Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a prison psychologist, twice a week for over a year. Dr. Martinez had helped him understand that his hatred of celebrities had been a way of avoiding his own guilt and helplessness. I blamed famous people because it was easier than admitting that sometimes bad things just happen. Morrison continued in his journal. I thought that if I could punish them, it would somehow make Danny's accident make sense. Morrison had also been meeting regularly with other inmates who were working on anger management. Many of them had committed crimes because they couldn't control their emotions just like he had. I met a guy named Carlos today, Morrison wrote. He's in here because he beat up his neighbor after they had an argument about a parking space. He said talking to me helped him understand that anger is just fear in disguise. I was afraid that my brother's accident was meaningless, so I got angry at people who had nothing to do with it. Dr. Martinez had told Morrison that understanding his mistakes was important, but it wasn't enough. He also needed to figure out how to make up for the harm he had caused. I know I can never undo what I did to Ms. Rousey, Morrison wrote, but maybe I can prevent other people from making the same mistakes I made. Dr. Martinez says I might be able to speak to police officers about anger management when I get out of prison. The idea of helping other cops avoid his mistakes gave Morrison hope for the first time in months. Maybe his terrible choices could be turned into something positive. Back in Los Angeles, Detective Torres was finishing up his shift when he got a call that reminded him why he loved being a police officer. An elderly woman had called 911 because she thought someone was breaking into her house. Torres and his partner responded to find that the burglar was actually her grandson, who had come to check on her but couldn't make her hear him knocking. Thank you so much, officers, the woman said after the confusion was cleared up. I feel so much safer knowing there are good police officers like you watching out for us. Torres smiled as he drove back to the station. This was what police work was supposed to be about, helping people and making them feel safe. 2 years ago, he had almost thrown away his career to protect a corrupt cop. Now he was exactly the kind of officer he had always wanted to be. Lieutenant Chen was also finishing up her work for the day. Her unit had just completed another investigation that resulted in the arrest of an officer who had been stealing money from suspects during drug arrests. That's 8 this month, she said to her assistant as she filed the paperwork. We're really making a difference. The culture of the police department had changed completely. Officers now knew that misconduct would be investigated thoroughly and punished severely. More importantly, they knew that doing the right thing would be supported by their supervisors. Chen's phone rang. It was Chief Thompson, calling to update her on the latest crime statistics. Sarah, I wanted you to know that citizen complaints about police misconduct are down 60% from 2 years ago.